I'm going to then kick it right back to you and say, well, we were going to talk about infertility, but from kind of a man's point of view. But I'm glad we have Jen here to give us some levity in the situation. But Brian, I know you've been trying to get pregnant, and I think this is a big important thing for you. And I think this is one of those conversations that we had a female kind of like led one. I think from a man's point of view, what are the dynamics that either you're going through, you're thinking about, or you're struggling with that as you're trying to kind of work through all these um, situations to get pregnant?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we've been trying for a little over 3 years now. And I always just kind of assumed, if we weren't using birth control, we would get pregnant. Apparently, it doesn't work that way. Um, so it's been a journey. I think my biggest challenge is figuring out the right way to, support my partner when I just think that men and women handle these things differently. And even though we might feel the same, it comes off differently. And it's a weird feeling because you feel kind of helpless. There's really nothing you can do, besides trying and different medications and whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely fascinating. I think it's something that guys don't talk about. I've never actually spoken to another male about this.
Yeah. So what's like I guess what's the overwhelming feeling, right? Is it like, are you disappointed in your ability to execute like a game plan? Is it do you have thoughts about like, well, what should you do for your partner, how to support them? Is it thinking strategy? Like what are the biggest thoughts that you're having?
No, the biggest one is definitely how to support your partner. I mean, there's nothing you could say or do, right? And it's one of those things where you've got your ovulation window and you're feeling really hopeful, and then you're hoping that the period doesn't come, and then it comes. A lot of people experience miscarriages. I mean, there's just it's such a complicated process, and it's more complicated than I ever thought. And as a
Well, what are the
male,
biggest takeaways, I guess? Like what are the things you've learned so far?
so a couple big ones. And I'll be as candid as I possibly can. But I did a lot of stupid things when I was younger. Um, and one of the things that I did was testosterone, not hormone replacement. Jen, maybe you could help me out here. But I was basically going to a clinic and I was getting injections of testosterone, which, in theory helps you as a male. It helps you feel better, helps your energy levels, all that stuff. But what I didn't know was that if you're not supplementing that testosterone with other things, you could really shut down your system. So, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong when I'm saying anything, but apparently when your body senses testosterone, coming into your body, it stops producing it naturally. So essentially I was killing myself, you know what I mean? And I felt a lot better and I was working out and this and that. But, you know, after that, I didn't realize until I went to the clinic that my testosterone, I think the scale is from about 250 to, we'll call it 1250. Don't quote me on that. I was like a 255. So I was as low as you possibly could be. And I always just thought, I was getting older and I thought being as tired as I always was normal. And I just thought it was a part of life. So I think the biggest takeaway was actually going to a clinic, getting some blood work done. The doctor put me on a bunch of vitamin D. She put me on a female hormone because, again, when your body starts sensing those hormones, it starts naturally producing testosterone. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So I guess then the question is, do you have to stop taking the testosterone to increase your fertility?
Yes. So taking any form of testosterone was hurting me because my body stopped producing it. So what they did was they put me on a female hormone called Clomid, and I guess my body started naturally to combat the female hormone, started producing testosterone again. So we were able to get my levels up. Everything looks good. I literally just went today, an hour ago, to get more tests done just to make sure that my levels are still up. So in answer to your question, I think a big takeaway is, especially for guys, I mean, you're never too young. I've kind of made myself a promise that every year on my birthday, I'm just going to go and get my blood work done and just make sure that my levels are where they're supposed to be. And it makes a world of difference just in your day-to-day life and how you feel and how much energy you have and so on and so forth.
So then I guess now if we go back to like your main concern, which is like supporting your partner,
Yeah.
what's the I guess again, like maybe kind of go through like the mindset, like what is it, what are the things that you're actually thinking, and then what are the strategies that you're coming up with?
Sure. So I like to call myself an unshakable optimist. So in my head, I've always believed that we're going to get pregnant. We're going to have kids. It's a girl. I already know. We have it all planned out. So that's kind of my angle, my perspective. Where I realize that that's not always realistic, and I realize that when people are struggling with infertility, the last thing that they want to hear is that it's going to happen in God's time, or maybe it wasn't, whatever it is. So to be honest, I don't really have a strategy yet. I mean, I continue to be optimistic.
I guess, do you share that optimism? Is it like that, hey, I want to stay optimistic so that my partner stays optimistic as well? Or is it that there's a balance between how much you'll be optimistic knowing that it might not work?
There has to be, well, there definitely has to be a balance. For me personally, it's not because it might not work, because I genuinely believe that it will. But I try and be careful because I do understand that people don't want to hear that. I mean, my sister who you spoke to, she had 6 miscarriages, and she had everybody in the world telling her, it's going to happen when it's time, this and that, and that was really frustrating to her. So as optimistic as I am, I try not to repeat those mistakes. Now I think about some of the things that I probably said to my sister to give her hope. It probably wasn't helping.
So then what should you say then? I guess what should you say?
I don't know. I wish I had an answer, and that's just me being honest.
Well, say, how about if you could go back and talk to your sister, knowing what you know now, knowing what you've been through and what she was going to eventually go through, what would you say?
I think sometimes saying nothing is could be the best thing to say. Like we are definitely taking actions for everything from health and fitness to going to clinics and getting blood work done and taking all the right steps. I think that's a lot more valuable than throwing out some empty wishes. And that's just specific to me. I wouldn't necessarily
Sure.
recommend that to everyone. If you were to ask my wife, I don't know if she would agree. But I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about, a while ago with like our love languages and how people like to communicate and so on and so forth. So it's a challenge. I realize that these are things that need to be communicated. But in the back of my head, I'm just kind of hoping that we'll get pregnant this month and we don't have to.
Well, I guess as a guy, right? Let's just say there's another guy out there, they're watching this. They're like, yeah, I'm going through the same thing. I have no idea what to tell my partner or my sister, whoever else is dealing with this. Is there one thing that you've learned in this process that was like a dramatic surprise that you're like, wow, I didn't think I would think this or this would happen?
Well, everything as far as my body goes, that was a surprise to me. That was something I did not know. Um, to be honest, we haven't. We've had lots of discussions about it, but I think all of our discussions are generally optimistic. And she's optimistic as well in the sense that if it doesn't happen for some reason, we've got an empty nest in 5 or 6 years, and we can go and travel and do all the things that others might not be able to.
Sure.
So I know this isn't really answering your question, but if I had any advice, it would just be to think about what you're saying before you say it, right? Because even though you think you might be giving a little bit of hope or optimism, could be doing the exact opposite. And also just to make sure to stay on top of your health and make sure that everything's working
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah, and I think those are the things that would be helpful, because I think in these situations, until we're in them, we really don't know what to expect, and we
Yeah.
kind of, we're all reactive in a certain way. Like until something happens, then we go, oh, let's do this. But I think the benefit of talking to people who've been through things is to say, well, what did you learn, right? Because at the end of the day, although we can temper our optimism, we can stay up on top of our health and blood work and all that, there are those probably things that, like when you're laying in bed at night or you're having this conversation and you're not really sure what to say or to think, or something that comes up that surprises you and you go, damn, I didn't know that would happen. I didn't feel that would happen. So it's like, if I press you on this and I go, what are the inside things that a person might just really not know and couldn't even fathom that maybe you've experienced that you go, I didn't think that would happen?
I mean, in the most basic term, it's just I thought that we would have sex and get pregnant, you know,
Right.
and that is not always the case. And just for the record, you know, I'm 37. Um, you know, no pre-existing conditions or anything like that. I just kind of assumed that it would happen. So I would say, you know, don't make that assumption. No matter how old you are, you know, just make sure to stay on top of it.
No, it's a great one. Jen, any thoughts from a woman's point of view as to, like, you know, maybe what a guy could think or what he should do to support his partner, or anything from your experience that would lend some help?
Yeah, I do have a couple things. One of the things, so, for perspective, again, I am by no means a medical professional, but I do work in a specialty of infertility. I work with 2 reproductive endocrinologists who help patients to realize their dreams of having children, maybe one day. In any case, the thing is that I think that a message that we try to convey to our patients all the time is you're not alone, because this can be very isolating. Like Brian said, I think one of the most common things that people experience is you just expect your body to do what it's supposed to do. So meaning, like, you breathe every day. You don't have to tell your lungs to, breathe, or, your brain does what it does, and you don't have to tell it, to do anything. And so I think that just conveying the message, you're not alone. So whether that's a hand squeeze or, just that, affirmation to them, letting them know that, because like I said, I mean, my gosh, you just, like he said, you can't believe that your body isn't doing something that it's just naturally supposed to do. But it is so much more common than anyone would ever expect, unless you're right on the threshold of experiencing infertility in some way, shape, or form. And so the other thing is about, a lot of women, they take it upon themselves to take the whole blame of why this is happening and all those kinds of things. But like he said, from a male perspective, males have hormones too. Your sperm doesn't always do what it's supposed to do. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so most people don't even think about those things. Like a guy doesn't necessarily, okay, so let me back up a little bit. A woman has her period every single solitary month. It's in your face every month. You notice patterns of behavior, so whether you have a certain type of cycle, a certain length of cycle, you're usually tracking your cycle, all these things. Guys don't necessarily pay attention to their sperm at all, unless it's a joke or this, who knows, whatever they happen to think about their sperm. I don't know. But women, it's always in your face. It's you think about it every single month, at least for 2 to 7 days or something like that. So I would say, to echo what Brian is saying, if you notice, and the sooner the better, if you notice that, maybe a couple of months have passed and you guys are actively trying to have a child and it's not happening, and you're doing everything on your end, meaning she's tracking her period, she knows when she ovulates, all those things are going according to plan, yeah, definitely go in and get both of you checked out, because it could be one or the other or both. And like he said, he was deficient in vitamin D. That played a huge factor in it. Sperm motility, meaning the sperm has a long way to go. Believe it or not, it doesn't seem like it, but it has to travel quite a length of ways to get to where it needs to fertilize the egg. And so if your sperm isn't moving the way that it should, it's never going to get there. There's just so many layers that come into play,
A fun fact, and I think one point that we should really drive home is that a lot of this stuff is fixable if it's addressed.
Absolutely.
You mentioned motility. Mine was at 0.01%. So not even 1% of, what is that? 1% of your sperm that's actually moving?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, essentially your sperm, that's the thing. So when you think about it, anyways, I don't want to get too graphic, but it suffice it to say that it has a long way to go to get where it needs to be in order to fertilize an egg. Like I said, it's not like the egg is just waiting right there for your sperm to, to fertilize it. And right. So like you said, when you're talking about motility, when you don't have that movement, it's not going to get anywhere that it needs to be.
Correct. Now, the good thing is that she was able to put me on medication and it fixed that problem right away. Right. So those are the things, it was a quick fix. It took maybe 2 weeks. My numbers shot right up. So these things are fixable.
Yeah.
Well, and I think for kind of practical reasons, I think what we should kind of end on is, like, because for most of us, like myself included, this isn't really a thought, and it hasn't been a thought. So, like, what would be the things, like the key things? So starting off, let's assume I'm a guy. I suspect that my sperm, might need to pick me up, right? Like, who do I even go to? So is it an endocrinologist? Is it like who is it actually? And then what would be the kinds of tests that I would actually do?
That's a great question.
I was going to say, I don't think that there's any way that you could ever suspect that your sperm was off necessarily, unless you were in this specific situation. But Brian,
you could put it under a microscope.
You guys went directly to a reproductive endocrinologist, correct?
We went directly, to an infertility clinic. And I'll tell you the process, Adam, because I just did it today. I had to leave a semen sample, and then I had to do some blood work, and that was it. So the semen sampling was just to check the motility to make sure everything was fine. But the blood work is that'll give you your testosterone levels as well as your vitamin D and all the other stuff that you need.
Well, are those the only tests that they test for, is like testosterone and a couple of vitamins, or are there other things?
No. So, and I'm sure Jen can speak to more, but my wife, she, I don't know what the test was called, but they put dye inside of her to make sure that she didn't have any blockages in her fallopian tubes. And I'm sure there's a plethora of more tests that can be done.
There's a lot of testing that can be done. There's, gosh, it's such a complex, specialty. There's so many tests that can be done. And just like with women, how we have a full range of hormones, men do too. And then vitamins come into play as well. Like he was mentioning, he had a very low vitamin D, and that can affect a lot of different things as well. The steps that could be taken, you could either, number one, address it with your primary care physician and ask if they could refer you to a fertility specialist. Number two, you call your insurance, find out if you do have any fertility benefits. If you don't, you might have to come out of pocket. Maybe the visit's $150 or somewhere between $150 and $300, just depending on the preliminary testing that needs to be done or not. And then, or you could go directly to a reproductive endocrinologist, fertility specialist on your own, depending on your financial situation. I mean, obviously a lot of people want it to be covered by their insurance, and believe it or not, more and more companies today, Bank of America, Starbucks, all offer some pretty comprehensive benefits when it comes to fertility. So don't exclude that.
I have a quick question. Your primary care physician can test your testosterone through blood work as well, right? Or that's
absolutely. So all those tests they don't have to be fertility related. You can go to your primary care physician and say, hey, we've been trying to get pregnant. We haven't been able to get pregnant. Is there any way you can do this coded under primary care just as a physical? Then they can test all of those hormones. And then if anything comes back flagged, certainly refer you out, but at least you'd have a baseline and because those are things that should probably be tested anyway, especially if you're having any symptoms, if you're feeling run down, lethargic, any sort of fatigue, any, strange, symptoms, you can't sleep, just any of that kind of thing, you should probably have a baseline. Yes. Go.
Yes. Even if you're not trying to get pregnant. So Adam, you're single.
Yeah.
You might not be thinking about kids right now, but I would still recommend doing it because if nothing else, your testosterone levels being where they're supposed to be is going to make you feel a lot better.
Yeah. So now again, just to summarize for people, I can go to my primary care, but there are separate clinics that would just do this.
Yes.
Okay. And then approximately $100 to $300, and
it just depends. Yeah.
Depending, but say, is that process like a one-day thing, or would that be a multiple-day thing?
It depends.
Yeah, it depends on the test. I mean, today I got my blood work done. I was in and out in 5 minutes. My insurance covered it, no charge. The semen analysis is not covered by my insurance. It was $125. And then I'll get the results from both probably in about a week's time.
But meaning a person could go presumably someplace, pay an amount, have their semen tested, one visit, and then get a result.
That's it.
Especially if you're a male. If you're a female, it's a little bit more involved.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, there's definitely some baseline things, but if you're a female, there's a lot more things that need to be checked that men don't have those parts. Essentially.
As always, right? As always. It's always hard for them. No, okay. Well, that's it. That's super informational. I think those are the kinds of things that are very specific that people can take away from that. This is what I do. This is who I contact. These are the tests I need. This is approximately how much it'll cost and how long it'll take. So it's awesome. Thanks, guys.
Go get checked.
You're welcome.
I definitely will.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam Khalil. Thank you so much for listening to this video. I definitely want you to subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more content like this. But if this content had any value to you, click the like button as well.